How close are we to a world where buildings can detect problems, fix themselves, and only call in humans when it's absolutely necessary? Well, today on Tech Talks Daily, I'm joined by Richard Leurig, President of Accruent. And together, we're going to explore the shift from smart buildings to truly autonomous buildings. And we'll talk about AI and IoT systems that are already predicting refrigeration failures days before they even happen, and how hybrid work is reshaping office space and why retrofitting older buildings might be easier than you possibly think. And he'll also share why he believes self-healing facilities could become reality in as little as 3 to 5 years. So if you've ever wondered what the future of the built environment looks like, this conversation will give you a glimpse of what's here right now, what's just around the corner, and what we can expect in the future. But enough from me. Let me introduce you to Richard right now. So thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am Richard Leurig. Happy to be here on the podcast today. I am president of Accruent, a software company, and my background is a little different than perhaps a lot of presidents who maybe come up through the commercial and sales function. My background has been largely in innovation, product technology, and engineering, and running organizations that produce technology products. I've been running organizations that produce technology, innovation, created innovation labs, working across both data, transaction processing, and software companies. And Accruent is unique in its global presence around a number of different industries. So we are really not in one industry. We are across several industries. And that made it an exciting and kind of different thing to go into, and how we solve problems pretty much behind the scenes. Much like Intel is the chip inside your PC, Accruent is inside a lot of the businesses and the organizations that you work with to make sure that they run efficiently and operate well.
And there's so much I want to talk with you about today, Richard. It was a great analogy there about the work that you're doing inside of businesses. And one term I think we've heard a lot recently is smart building. We hear about it for the last few years, but you're talking about autonomous buildings, from what I understand. So what is the distinction in your view, and how close are we to that reality that we've been reading about over the last 3 years?
Well, first of all, a lot of buildings that are new builds, things that are being built from scratch, are being built with smart technologies in them. A lot of smart, from the HVAC systems through to security systems, through sensors and how we look at occupancy and so on. And that's that smart technology that we're used to. You know, everything that we use in our homes to control our thermostats and things like that off of our mobile devices. So a lot of smart technology is out there that says if the temperature goes up based on a certain schedule, I'm going to reduce the temperature. If the HVAC system goes down, I'm going to go and look at a system that says it manages just that HVAC system, and I need to figure out what's wrong with it as a human. Okay. A lot of companies, universities, and so on are also retrofitting existing older buildings to be smart buildings. A lot of that has to do with the mandates around, climate control, the climate change, and so on. And, in order to manage those energy consumption patterns and the energy usage, you're putting smarter technologies into the building. I think the next generation and where things are going, and really where we're planning and building our products towards, is what we call autonomous or self-healing buildings. And that is not just having the smart technology in the building, but being able to interconnect those smart technologies together and those sensors together such that AI systems and systems that are looking at and monitoring the building can actually perform more self-healing, can redirect operations around a bad HVAC system in a certain area of the building, or around a bad event that's going through and obviously has a leak based on some leak control prevention methodology. In a refrigeration unit perspective, we've already done some of this in retail stores where when the temperature is rising in the store and rising outside. This was really big in the UK that we did a couple of years ago, where we're able to actually reduce or increase the temperature, reduce the cooling within certain refrigeration units that have non-perishable food items in them, okay? So it is taking action that humans do not have to monitor, look at, or deal with. The biggest expense for any organization is the human that's sitting there looking at all of these various systems, multiple panes of glass. I often refer to it as there are multiple panes of glass that somebody is looking at. Obviously, we're trying to bring right now to a single pane of glass everything that you do for operations and maintenance, but really the end state is no pane of glass. And that is where you get to autonomous or self-healing. And so when you get to autonomous, the system itself is rolling a truck with a person that has a wrench that needs to fix the problem when and if and only that person needs to roll and go there. And so now you're eliminating a human monitoring the system. You're only rolling a maintenance person when they have to. And you're telling the maintenance person before they actually go out to the facility, you might need these parts to repair this problem. Because when we've seen this problem in other buildings, this is the problem that you're going to have to fix. One of the most frustrating things I think we all have, even as people within our own homes, is that when somebody shows up and says, I don't have the right parts to fix that problem, I need to go back. It happened to me recently, and they came back 3 times, still having to replace out the wrong, a different part. So the whole goal of autonomous buildings is let the building run itself, bring a human in from outside as a maintenance person to fix the building when and if and only you need that person to do that. It's bringing all these things together, and it's really reducing it down to no panes of glass. Now, you asked, where are we in this journey? We're not near that point yet. But the evolution of AI and where it has gone so far in the last 10 years, really, I mean, we've heard about it in the last 2 years, but the evolution of AI technologies, going back to even when IBM Watson won at the Jeopardy game, all the way through to today where, AI is able to complete bar exams for lawyers and counselors and things like that. This whole evolution of AI is actually enabling us with technologies that learn over time what's happening within a specific facility, within a maintenance facility. I talk to a lot of our customers and they say, hey, that's 10 years out. It's 10 years out when an AI agent is going to do that. I'm thinking it's more like 3 to 5 years from now that we get to the point where we have really what I'll call full autonomous buildings operating. It won't be across 100% of the built environment, but it will be across a large part of the built environment in the next 3 to 5 years. Within 5 to 10 years, it's really going to take a step up from that. And it's evolving so quickly. It is like the .com or the internet boom was in the late 90s and early 2000s. We're going to see that with AI, that the evolution of what people can do in an operations and maintenance environment is going to be astonishing, and it isn't going to be 10 years from now. A lot of it's happening now, and a lot of it you're going to start to see in a bigger way in the next 3 to 5 years, I believe.
Wow. And I love the example you used earlier in your answer. I think it will resonate with everyone, wherever they're listening in the world, those repeated engineer visits. And I think we all would agree that there is a need to go towards a more proactive way of managing buildings rather than reactive and waiting for something to go wrong and then calling an engineer, etc. And whether it be healthcare to higher education and retail as well, you guys work across a wide range of verticals. And with that in mind, I'm curious, are there any common challenges in the kind of building operations across these sectors, or does each one require a different playbook?
They're more similar than they're dissimilar. There are some, though, where safety and compliance are at a higher level right now. For example, when you get into pharmaceutical, life science, healthcare types of industries, the amount of food and beverage, the amount of compliance that's required around maintenance and operations facilities, around the assets that are running them, is much higher. When you're in healthcare, you're really talking about patient safety and patient health. That's a big concern for everybody. The commonality, though, across all of these is you have an aging infrastructure and you have workers who are not necessarily trained to do the manual things that are necessary to fix or go in and repair what they need to repair. And so we're finding, and what we're hearing from a lot of customers is they're struggling to find the people that are properly trained to actually work on the assets and the things that they need to do to fix and repair what they need to repair. And that's why technologies that allow you to interact and say, I'm standing in front of an asset, I'm getting a certain kind of error code. What do I need to do to fix it? And those kinds of technologies and things that we're building in are very important to our customers, because everyone has a labor shortage right now. And you could say, there are different pockets where there's higher or lower unemployment. This isn't a global unemployment or employment problem. This is skilled laborers in specific technology and areas within maintenance, within facilities, and so on.
And I think if we go back, 5 years, I think the pandemic disrupted how we all think about physical space and what it means to go to work. So how have you seen the conversation around return to office strategies shifting in the past year, and especially with hybrid working as well? What role do you see technology playing in that transition and how we manage buildings?
Yeah, it's interesting because during COVID and the pandemic, there was a belief that maybe return to office would never happen. Maybe people would never go back to the workplace. Maybe these buildings inside of London and New York City and Miami and Sydney, Australia would sit empty. That isn't happening. There is a return to office mandate that a lot of companies have, but they're going to much more of a hybrid or kind of an employee-friendly experience as they go back to return to office. What that means is you have these uneven flows of space utilization. And so understanding where space is being utilized, where space might be able to be better utilized, is very important. We've put together technologies that allow us to look at data across things like what properties do you have leased? How much occupancy are you using in those properties? How are you doing space and event booking in those properties? And what might be the right configuration for you? Maybe you need more space of a certain type in one facility. Maybe you need to eliminate another facility entirely because you don't even have any employees in that area any longer. And so it's become much more difficult. I even heard from a customer in the last 2 weeks that they spend a person and a half just looking through reporting and data, and they were looking at one of our products to fix this problem, looking through reporting and data to figure out when are people coming into the buildings, when are they leaving the buildings, how are they working within the buildings? Is there a surplus of space in certain areas of the building and they need to try to move more over there? Do they need to reconfigure the buildings and have more team workplaces and event centers? Even ourselves as Accruent have gone to a configuration that has much more team space than it does cubicle space, because we find when the teams do get together in a hybrid environment, they want to work together and they want to go into a conference room or a team space and work on a project. And so you're finding the nature of work when people get together much different than the old days of just rows and rows of cubicles and everyone is optimizing around how many people can I fit in that space. It's really now a much more complex and data-driven type of problem that folks are working on.
And before we sat down together today, I've been reading how you've spoken around AI and IoT systems that work together to detect, diagnose, and even resolve building issues without human input. So can you just walk me through a real world example of where this is already happening? Because I think very often we think, oh, this will be great in the future. But in some places, this is already a thing, right?
Yeah. So the biggest thing best example, because it impacts the customer in so many different ways, is specifically where we've deployed our IoT technologies and our anomaly detection and preventative maintenance technologies over the top of refrigeration units in retail settings. So grocery stores, convenience stores, that type of environment where perishable goods are at risk. You would be astonished at the amount of money that is lost by retailers for perishable goods because of refrigeration units that go bad. And the problem is, if it goes bad at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're either paying somebody a lot of money to come and fix it at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's if you even have it censored and configured and connected. If you don't, you come in the morning, all of the perishable items are bad. You throw them away. You have to replace them. You have consumers and customers that are coming in that want to buy those perishable goods, and they don't work. What we've done is we've taken and connected to these refrigeration units. And with our data science team and our AI team, through machine learning, we actually look at anomaly detection. We look at patterns of things that occur prior to a refrigeration unit actually going bad or having a failure. Everything from vibration to other types of sensor information on temperature and so on that detect well in advance. In some cases, we've detected 48 to 72 hours in advance of a refrigeration unit that's going to go bad. What we're then able to do is actually dispatch a repair person during normal business hours to facilitate the repairs on those units. The perishable items are not lost. There's not a problem. We're applying that same technology in other spaces now, that same anomaly and preventative maintenance, predictive maintenance technology. So a lot of companies are using predictive maintenance, but the predictive maintenance is not detecting early enough in advance of the problem. What you have to do is make sure that you're looking at trends over time. And I have to tell you, it takes a lot of data. It takes billions of telemetry data points to basically get to a point where you're able to say, I am pretty confident with 99% plus accuracy. Because what you don't want to do is tell some of the largest retailers in Europe and in the world that they're going to dispatch a maintenance person to fix something that may or may not happen. There's a 50-50 chance. So you have to be very, very accurate in what you're predicting in order for it, you to dispatch somebody to go fix the problem. And you have to know where the problem is coming into. So is it a fan that's going to go bad on a refrigeration unit that then does not allow now in some environments, in some verticals, they fixed it, but they fixed it because they have such high margins and make so much money. And I'll talk about one is pharmaceuticals, right? So we approached the pharmaceutical industry and said, hey, we could detect in advance. And they said, we don't really care because we have 2 cold rooms. And if one room goes bad, we move all this stuff to another room because we cannot afford to lose 1 tray of pharmaceuticals that we're in the process of manufacturing, right? So in those environments, it makes perfect sense that they have kind of redundancy in facilities, redundancies in equipments. When you're talking about a grocery store, on the supermarket on the corner, in a city, they're not going to have redundant refrigeration units. They've got lettuce, they've got tomatoes, they've got things sitting there, fruits, vegetables that are going to go bad, and you need to know that they're going to go bad before they go bad, and the losses are very high when you don't. So that's an example of where we've actually done it in the real world.
Wow, that's incredibly cool. And this year, of course, there's a lot of talk around AI agents and how they could be taking over more decision-making roles. And I'm curious, are you seeing an appetite from facilities teams to let go of manual control, or is there still a little hesitation now? Or is it somewhere in between? What are you seeing?
I think it's somewhere in between. First of all, when you talk about AI, what's important is people publicly are familiar with things like ChatGPT, maybe Copilot. So they're familiar with, okay, it goes out on the internet, it takes data, and it comes back with a response. Instead of going to Google, perhaps I go to ChatGPT, ask a question, it comes back with a response. So the immediate perception of many people when you mention AI in the business world is all of my data, all of my proprietary data is going to be put on the internet into public view, and you're going out on the internet and doing something with an AI tool. So the first thing you have to explain to some of the people that are more skeptical is that you're not putting their data out. That the data we're looking at is either data we're providing around the usage of the system and how the system works, or it's their data of how, their leases, their work orders, their maintenance facilities, and so on. So you have to convince them it's still safe and secure, even though you're using the word AI, right? Number one. Number two is AI and certain forms of AI, and I've done talks on this in the past, still are not ready. Generative AI likes to hallucinate. It wants to create an answer where an answer may not be available. So you have to be very careful how you deploy and what you're deploying in AI, whether it's agentic or AI or generative, where you don't want to launch a space shuttle. You don't want to launch astronauts and say, oh, we just left it up to the AI. And when the AI was posed with a question, it was like so wanting to answer the question that it fired a rocket when it was not supposed to, right? So where lives are dependent on it, it becomes much more difficult. But where those AI agents can be deployed, for example, to say things like, tell me the most expensive facilities that we have in the fleet of facilities. What is costing the most money? What asset is working better than another asset? Which assets fail more frequently? How where is most of my time being spent for all my maintenance facility folks? And how much time do they spend between facilities when they're going between facilities? Asking natural language, regular questions without a user said this the other day. I don't want 1,000 more, literally, this conversation happened yesterday. I don't want 1,000 more dashboards. I just want to ask questions. And I'm glad that's what you're moving towards, because yes, we allow customers to have dashboards and reporting and analytics. But where the world is moving quickly with these AI agents is ask a simple question and get an answer. And that answer can be as simple as, how do I add an asset to the system? What's the best way to do that? And it might walk them through step by step in doing that, rather than them having to call a support person. It might show a little vignette or a video of how to do that. But it's also, how do you tie relationships of things together? In talking to some of our customers who use our leasing and contracts product, they want to know, like, how many leases do we have coming up in 2 years? When are they going to expire? What are they worth? Where are they? How am I going to make a decision on a new site? They want to ask plain language questions. They don't want to navigate a whole bunch of data to get down to a result, to export it into an Excel spreadsheet and do a bunch of work. Now, do these AI agents allow you to export data to a spreadsheet? Yeah, they absolutely do. When you get down to a smaller subset of the data. But where things are moving with these AI agents, and it's moving quickly, and we're not only developing some of these things, but we've deployed some things to answer questions and so on. We're going to go in a much bigger way as we're building this out right now in 2026, where it'll be much more interactive with AI agents. And yes, there will still be a user interface. But I have to tell you, like, looking into the future, 10 years from now, there may not be user interfaces as we know them today. There may just be prompts that you interact with and you ask questions for. And when they come up, they say, what are you trying to do? And they present you with a form to do it if you're trying to add an asset or something else. And then it's going to be all about the data and how you connect and tie the data together, which is what everyone's been talking about for years, quite frankly. It's going to really become that with AI, much more so than you realize.
And I suspect when you shared that story there of the business leader saying, I don't want another dashboard, I think that will resonate with so many people, and so many people will be going, yes, exactly that. We've all been impacted by alert fatigue in one way or another. And the other thing, of course, is energy efficiency and sustainability. These are now board level priorities, especially with the introduction of ESG scores, for example. So how are autonomous systems maybe helping businesses not only reduce emissions, but cut costs in measurable ways and be able to prove that?
Yeah. So we've been able to do it by altering and controlling HVAC systems and, heating and cooling within certain environments, right? So basically, what's important to know is what are the tolerable levels of temperature variations that are required in a specific environment. And when there's nobody sitting there, why are you cooling a floor just because at 6 o'clock in the morning it said turn the air conditioners on? And so when it detects a person, one person does not generate enough heat to require a level of cooling that may be required. So the simplest and easiest example of all of this is we've had for a long time electrical lights pretty much in any building you go in now that it has any energy efficiency at all will turn off the lights in a business setting when you leave for a certain period of time. But But if you knew when and how to turn up and down, which by the way exists today, and we do it in some environments, we do it especially in retail, is when you actually detect what are the temperatures that are going on, what are the temperatures outside, where are people sitting, where does the sun come through a window, where does that need to be cooled more, but something else needs to be cooled less, versus these universal things. Now, it requires a smarter HVAC in some cases. I've been in older buildings where you turn on the air conditioner, it air conditions a gigantic floor, right? But still, if nobody is sitting on that floor, you also, through the space management tools, want to move people when they ask for cubes or a conference room, you move them to where other people are. So now you're cooling or heating those floors and not cooling and heating the other floors that nobody is sitting at. And so these are areas that are just simple. The other thing is, and we haven't done this yet, but this is something we're working on, is in the food and beverage industry and a lot of other process manufacturing industries, they're really working on sustainability and on the different mandates that are required and so on. And as a company, they've committed to it. The problem is that they have very old plant lines that they're running. And those plant lines, while they operate, may be operating with equipment that's out of tolerance and is drawing much more electricity. So they're doing things like managing what the HVAC system is doing, air conditioning, heating. Maybe they're turning off the lights, but their actual line that's running 24/7 or 8 hours a day or whatever is actually consuming and drawing more power off the line. Off of the electric grid than is actually correct within tolerable levels. There are actually sensors now you can put on individual devices and say, how much energy are they drawing? And is it right and within certain tolerances? And you can alert to actually go out and repair that device so that it isn't drawing more energy on that plant line. And so that's kind of the next generation of this, is well beyond what is obvious, which is air conditioning and heating, is individual devices that are in a business setting, a lot of them in manufacturing settings, are drawing more power and are actually going against some of these mandates and sustainability things that people are working on. Because they're not going to go spend $100 million swapping out equipment. But if you were to put sensors that are now very cheap onto these devices, you're able to see that they're drawing more energy than they need. A motor on a line may be drawing way more energy than it needs to actually do its function, and maybe it just needs to be repaired.
And as someone that's right in the heart of this space, I'm curious, what are the most surprising or maybe even overlooked use cases of smart facility tech that you think will become mainstream in the next, 2 to 3 years? I understand the speed of technological change. It's almost impossible to make a prediction like that. But is there anything that excites you or has caught your eye there?
I think the biggest thing is that I think that most companies believe, and most people believe, that if it is not a new facility, that you cannot apply some of these techniques to older facilities, older retail locations, older business settings, older factories. And I just used some examples of that. And I think what you will find is that when people really look and get down to it, there's a lot more that can be done than what they believe, and it will not require building a brand new built environment in a city. We're used to science fiction movies where you see the future cities and it's all brand new buildings that have been replacing everything that ever existed. First of all, I like a lot of the buildings that existed historically, and I want them to exist. Secondly, I don't believe it requires you to build all brand new buildings in order to take advantage of some of these things. And I think what people will find, and the surprising factor will be that over the next few years, you're going to find that these older facilities, older plant floors, older factories are going to actually be much more automatable than what they believe today.
Wow, incredibly exciting times ahead. And finally, what would you say your outlook is for the built environment over the next 5 years, a little bit longer term? What's the biggest driver of change? Is it AI? Will it be regulation, sustainability, employee demand, or something completely different? What do you see as ahead there?
Well, I think the obvious answer is employee demand of going back to work and return to work on the regular space.
Yeah.
But I do think that and AI is obviously going to change everything that we do. I've spoken about that earlier. it is going to change not just what we do in our personal lives, but what we do in our business lives. I think that will drive some sustainability initiatives, by the way. I think the two are more linked than people realize, between AI and sustainability. I think that we're entering into a very exciting era of change, something that, the internet was a real change in how people used computers. I think the AI world is going to be a change on how we use the built environment. So.
And that is a powerful moment to end on. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights with me today. Pure gold there, and certainly a lot of food for thought for people listening. But before I do let you go, one final gift I would like you to leave everyone listening, and that is a book that means something to you that we can add to our Amazon wish list, or a song for our Spotify playlist. I don't mind which, but what's that final gift you're going to leave everyone with?
Yeah, that's a good one. There's so many books that mean so much, and songs. But here's one that I'm reminded of, because I gave a speech a number of years ago at an employee at a leadership conference that we were having for a company I worked for, and they said, "Richard, we want you to give a speech on what it's like to excel under pressure." And my lead-in song for that speech was "Under Pressure" by Queen.
Yeah,
and everyone kind of got a laugh at the irony of the Under Pressure song. And I think under pressure is what we are all in every single day, in work, at home, in all of these different things. When that song comes on, I still smile and laugh about it, because it's kind of how we live our world. And so it's really how you overcome that as a leader, as a person, as a member of your family, as a partner. Those things I think are very important to keep in mind. And for me, it's almost like an irony or an ironic song to like Under Pressure, because it's like we are under pressure. You can't remove that pressure. What you can do is live through it, and live through it as a good leader and a good human.
What a great choice. A great story, a great song. I absolutely love that. I'll get that added straight to our Spotify playlist. And for people listening, wanting to learn more about anything we talked about today, where would you like to point them?
Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on X, but mostly for sport, not for business. But people are happy to connect with me there too.
Awesome. I'll add links to your LinkedIn and X. And you've gone there now. I've got to ask the question: what sport? What's your sports there? What is it you follow?
I love college basketball here in
Yep.
the United States. It's the time of season we're getting into it here in the fall, that I really enjoy. I think it's very exciting. I think it's different than professional basketball, because the players are younger and they're just more excited and energetic about what it is. And where I grew up, college basketball in my hometown was like a professional sport. But I like the Dallas Cowboys, which I have season tickets to for American football. And I like regular football, soccer, which I'm very much looking forward to the World Cup coming to Dallas in 2026. So getting ready to get my tickets for that.
Oh, awesome. Hopefully you'll get some to see some good games there. The World Cup is like no other tournament. Amazing. And I've also loved just talking with you today about the rise of technology here, AI-powered systems that are transforming building operations, the evolving role of AI and IoT in creating that truly autonomous buildings, that vision that we've been reading about for so long, and also the future of smart facilities, what it means for business efficiency, all wrapped up with a great song and a little conversation about sports at the end there too. But thanks for joining me. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So what resonated with you most today? For me, it was the reminder that autonomy in our built spaces isn't science fiction anymore. It's quietly becoming reality through predictive maintenance, natural language AI tools, and smarter use of energy. And Richard's perspective, I think, shows quickly how these technologies are evolving and how they connect directly to sustainability goals, efficiency, and even the way that we experience our workplaces without even realising it. So if you'd like to keep the conversation going, you connect with Richard on LinkedIn or find him through Accruent. I'll put the website details there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you feel about the idea of buildings that that think and act for themselves. Kind of reminds me of that old movie Christine, or the Stephen King book Christine. But I don't want to get sidetracked there. That's a story for another day. So thank you so much to Richard for coming on today. Even bigger thank you to each and every one of you for tuning into this podcast. I know how precious your time is and how many different podcasts are begging for your attention. It's a pleasure to have you on board. I'll speak with you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.